finally, we can be a real archer in Diablo 4. Even nightmare dungeons with much higher level than yours will not be a problem, because you move fast, because you deal a lot of damage from large distances with a bow. So this is basically a really fun ranged rogue build for fast farm. So let's take a quick look at the skills, at the Paragon board, at the aspects to see how this build works. The main skill that we use here in this build is rapid fire. And you know what? Even the correct word would be not use, but rather spam. We're really spamming this skill all over the place. And the coolest thing about it is that we can do it for free thanks to how the improved rapid fire upgrade works. When we hit a vulnerable enemy with rapid fire, we get back 15 energy. I bet it's gonna be nerfed at some point, because as for now we can just run around and spam rapid fire and like never run out of energy. And in fact, we don't have any basic skill in this build, we don't actually need it, but then what do we use to make enemies vulnerable? And we do it really easy with help of Exploit Paragon Glyph. Exploit is a must-have glyph for this build as well as for any other build with rapid fire, because when using this glyph, enemies that you attack with any abilities become vulnerable. It works only once in 20 seconds per each enemy though, and this is why in the situations when you fight elites who are like 15 levels higher than you are, or bosses, you will of course need another source to make them vulnerable. And don't worry, we have such an alternative in this build. I'm speaking about Concealment here. Concealment is further necessary to become unstoppable, and that's a crucial thing to survive in high-level dungeons. But we also specifically want Subvert and Stealth, which is an improvement of the Concealment skill. This improvement makes any enemy vulnerable when you hit them with a skill that breaks Concealment. So practically when we fight bosses and they are not vulnerable anymore, in order not to run out of the energy, we use Concealment, attack the boss, and that makes them vulnerable for 6 seconds again, and we again have rapid fire that we can cast for free. We also use caltrops to prevent enemies from coming too close, because we really want to fight them from distance. But that's not the only effect of the caltrops. Another good thing for us is that the enemies in caltrops take increased damage from us, and they are also chilled. I choose this improvement because we also use Concealment in this build. Although I must admit that you will only need this skill if you fight enemies or elites that are much higher level than you are. We want to chill and freeze them so they don't attack us. And we additionally have extra damage against frozen and chilled enemies with Frigid Finesse. And that's not all, even above these, it helps us deal more damage to enemies that are chilled in our caltrops. By the way, here's a small trick. This aspect helps to deal much more damage to the enemies in the caltrops and helps to more effectively prevent them from reaching out to you. Caltrops also throw exploding stun grenades, so this means that when we cast them, enemies will not only be slowed but also be actually stopped for half a second, but that's enough. Next ability is also extremely important, it's Dark Shroud. It not only gives us insane amount of damage reduction, but also increased movement speed. And we sure want to move as fast as possible. And now moving to our last skill, it's our ultimate, it's the Rain of Arrows. To be honest, I think this skill is not that great in common, but in this build it kinda works out. First of all, it helps us clean a lot of trash mobs, it knocks down stronger enemies, and it freezes them if we're using it alongside with a cold amulet. And of course, it also resets our cooldown, and this is very important. And by the way, I don't believe that this unique item is really any good, and that's why I don't use it in this build. Next thing we go for the specialization, and it is obviously preparation. Because I mean, there is not a single reason to use any other kind of specialization when we have rapid fire. Because again, we don't have any basic skills first of all, and second of all, we have like literally unlimited energy all the time anyway. And so we stick with preparation, it resets cooldown when we use our ultimate. And also, since we're spending so much energy on rapid fire, it will help us decrease the cooldown on Rain of Arrows. Now just a couple of words about passives. Our key passive of course is Precision, since we're dealing damage with 2 marksman skills, and so this extra critical damage is a must-have in our situation. Next passive we take is Starter Step for extra movement speed. Next thing, without a doubt, Weapon Mastery, it's a must-have, as well as Exploit and Malice, because we want to have as much extra damage as possible. And here I also chose Impetus because we are also moving all the time, and so we will have this bonus constantly. And next, haste. Basically, it's also 15% increased movement speed, because we don't spend much energy, and so we will have like a maximum level of energy almost always. And before I forget, the link to the build for those who need it, with all the skills and the paragon and the items, will be in the pinned comment. Anyway, let's take a look at the key items that we use here. Increased armor for 4 seconds when you deal any form of damage. It's a must-have for any build, it's just almost too good to be true, so here no questions, I think. Less damage from crowd-controlled enemies. Again, enemies that will come close to you will be either slowed or chilled, so we want some damage reduction, and also we will get some extra movement speed. Considering that we use Dark Shroud, it's good to have this aspect too. Critical strikes have up to 50% chance to grant a free Dark Shroud shadow. Next thing we have here, dealing direct damage to a vulnerable enemy has an up to 45% chance to daze them. And dazed enemies don't attack us, so it's a very nice thing to have in nightmare dungeons. On the main weapon I have this aspect, and yeah, I know it's not the best version of this aspect unfortunately, but still. Up to 34% increased damage based on your available primary resource when cast. Really good for rapid fire because we don't use primary resource. Another must-have aspect is this one. It gives 45% for rapid fire to ricochet on another target. It will help us to clean large groups of enemies a lot. On our amulet, we have an aspect for extra movement speed. Each time when we make a critical strike and moving even faster. And I also love to have this aspect, that for marksman skills on lucky hit gives us 10% chance to create a narrow storm. And with this build, such storms will appear all the time. Now really quickly to the Paragon board. There are many ways to make this build work, but an absolute must-have glyph here is Exploit, as we already mentioned. But in order to get the maximum damage from our rapid fire, I took 2 other glyphs. First of those is Combat. Critical strike damage with core skill is increased. And Ranger, additional damage with marksman skills and additional damage reduction when we are using a ranged weapon. And I have only one legendary note here, the No Witnesses one. It increases the range of our Rain of Arrows, but most importantly it grants 10% increased damage for 20 seconds when cast an ultimate, or after having cast the ultimate to be precise. It's an additional buff to our rapid fire. And yes, most of the enemies we will be killing with rapid fire. So as you can see, this build works perfectly against weaker enemies, against tougher enemies, against bosses or strong elites. And because you got such a high attack speed and movement speed, you'll be able to clean out dungeons really fast. Obviously we ought to be careful since we are not that tanky and we don't have any self-heal, but high movement speed will guarantee us survival. And if you're still looking for a more tanky rogue build, I suggest you to go and watch the one that you can see on your screen now. I hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you for your attention. Bye bye.